Hello, Gospel Revolutionaries around the world, and here we are again at the 2025 Fall Calgary Grace Conference. I have with me the foremost voice in demonology at one point.
Yes, and believe me, it was a voice of authority.
Demons out.
Yes. And phone off. Jeez, speak of demons. Jesus. Then they just show up right in your house.
You know, Michael, there are, as we opened up yesterday's session, we talked about that we were going to talk about some topics that we have talked about before and kind of go back to basics. And it has grown into something more than that. But also, too, it's a note that the GR is growing. The Gospel Revolutionaries are growing. We have new GRs that are starting to write in and letting us know that they're listening and they have their questions. And, just take an opportunity here, Michael, to introduce who we are. And Michael, you were a prominent Word of Faith pastor, teacher. You traveled all over, and you traveled and rubbed shoulders with all of the famous ones, some of which today are still active and blowing and growing and all of that. Kenneth Copeland and Benny Hinn, and the list could go on and on and on. You even worked with my old boss, Larry Huggins.
And if with is a word,
yes,
it's functional.
And I was a Word of Faith pastor, and pastored 3 churches with my dad, and also traveled the country with a Word of Faith prophet. But we had an encounter with grace. And we started realizing, and Michael, you declared this how many years ago, that it don't work.
It don't work. And what a moment, what a time. And, Daniel, thank you for graciously introducing. I was going to say something about you introducing me this way, but you did include us both. But you just got introduced to has-beens as far as I can tell. So welcome to the has-beens club. We used to be something, now we ain't nothing. And being nothing is a good thing to be when you know you're in Christ and you don't need nothing more. Because that truly is what understanding who you are in Christ does. It doesn't make any difference what is going on around you. And that we're very grateful for. What we are doing, we thought we were just going to be going back and filling in folks that had not come as far, and all of us enjoy going back and rehearsing what we know, but you're learning things, well, if you knew them, I didn't, that's for sure. Daniel and I are about to present to you a teaching that was supposed to have been just a repeat, but my gosh, I've never been so, and I mean this, I've never been so shocked at what I thought I knew and thought was all squared away, and found out that something very true and very accurate gives us an even greater insight into the gospel of grace and the gospel of peace. It clears up distortions that we've been trying to explain our way around, but we didn't understand them ourselves. Yeah. So it's hard to explain a distortion when you don't understand the distortion and how it came to be. If you're going to explain your way out of something, you have to know what the something is that you're in. And I just absolutely didn't know. I've looked over at Daniel several times and asked him, am I the only one here? I've never known any of this. He keeps reading, and we keep reading and looking. And it's like, where did that come from? Where has this Bible been all of these years? We're used to that in the Gospel Revolution, because we know how that once the scales of what we all know, the new, you can put that down as the epitaph of truth. Well, we all know, that's the epitaph for truth. You just, because what is known by everybody is 99% of the time not truth. And truth always comes through a small crack in the wall, a small light through the curtain, person from the hills in India. You just never know what's going to happen, but it never comes through the crowd. It never comes through the group. It never comes through we all know. So we all know is a place where insecure people go to find validation for what they think. And I don't have to have everybody to know what I know to feel comfortable about knowing it. If I would have needed that, I would not be teaching anything that I have shared with you, that many of you have said has saved your life. I was able to teach things that nobody has ever heard, at least between you and I and the fence post, as they say down south. And none of us had ever heard any of these things. I certainly had not. I certainly, being around the folks that Daniel told you, which is accurate, and like you said, plus more, I had never heard anything about grace. The things that you guys have told me has changed your lives. Even Don Bartlett, my gosh, just simply getting a little cassette tape. And all I did is read chapter 3 of Galatians, where Jesus said that you that are justified by the law, you've fallen from grace. And then I said, what does it not say? It does not say that you that break the law have fallen from grace. It says that you that have kept the law and count it for righteousness, you have fallen from grace. And changed his whole life. And we have Daniel sitting here. The first and last Adam changed. It's right there. It's been there all that time. It was in his Bible the entire time he was being raised by his father. He had a pastor, an elder, a deacon, all kinds of things that were making decisions for him. And right there in his own Bible was the first and the last Adam. It was in the Bible of everybody that taught him. But you see, that wasn't our focus. And you're going to see today that Jesus spoke into a time that people were focused on something other than the Mosaic law. Now, I am just blown away. I don't even know how to tell you, please keep your ears plugged in, stop the mower, stop sweeping the floor, sit down and listen to this. Find some place, turn it off if you're driving in your car. Wait till you get home where you can sit down and listen. Now, James, you can keep driving the tractor because we know that you do that in your sleep anyway. That's where James Gustafson listens all the time. Wherever you are comfortable, that you know that you are hearing what you're listening to. And you're not going to miss things because somebody's asking you questions or this, that, or the other. Just please don't be distracted to this. It's way too important. So the big scope for me of this, and I'll let Daniel say what this has done for him, is that I realized that Jesus and his encounter with the Jews was not about the law of Moses. I am just in utter shock. And the justifications for and the blame of trying to say that Moses' law was the traditions of men by men like Andre Rabe and Francois du Toit, and the list goes on. And they point to these verses. We're going to point to the same ones, but we're going to show you that Jesus was not debating with them about the law of Moses. So it's a paradigm shift that I've got to go back and read everything all over again, because let me tell you this, as you start listening, Jesus was not debating with them, and the things that he was saying, I would say 80% of them, had nothing to do with the laws of Moses, and we're going to show you exactly what they were about, but how that they have been misused to say that Jesus was talking about the law of Moses, and therefore they are nothing but the traditions of men.
Wow.
What did it do to you?
Yeah. So we're talking about shadows, and Hebrews 10:1 says this. We looked at, on the last session, we looked at Adam being the shadow because he was made in the image, and that word image actually means a shadow, a pattern. And so he was made after the image, the likeness of God. And in the same way, we're going to look at another shadow today, and that is the law. Hebrews 10:1, for the law having a shadow of the good things to come, and not the very image of the things, can never, with the same sacrifices which they offer continually, year by year, make those who approach it perfect. But Michael, what we are learning is before we can really even look at the shadow of the law, there was something that eclipsed the law. And that was what we have known for a long time called fence laws.
Well, it is, and you're going to be shocked at how Jesus reversed the fence laws on them psychologically. Things that you think Jesus taught when all Jesus was doing was saying, you do it your way, I'm going to do it my way, and let's see which fence law wins out. It is shocking. What you're about to learn is, for me, was nothing short of shocking. And it moves us down the ball field. I'm not good at sports metaphors, but I try. We'll kick the football through the hoop someday. One of these days, that's going to actually happen, and I'll be right. So. But the power of what is actually written here is astounding. So if we're dealing with shadows, and that the shadows teach. So to learn from a shadow, you have to see the shadow. I want you to imagine just for a moment that you are doing little hand puppets on the wall. We've done that. I don't know how to do them. But imagine that something eclipsed between that light and your hands, that something eclipsed that. That's what we go through when the moon, the earth moves between the sun and the moon. We get an eclipse. And this is what is being talked about, is that there is an eclipse. So shadows are very powerful things to learn from. We know that Adam is a shadow, but you've got to keep that shadow right. If you distort Adam's shadow, you will distort the light of Christ. You cannot distort. Now, there's everybody, they want to put Adam in some kind of light. They want to make him righteous. They want to do all kinds of things to him. But the thing you can't do is put light in a shadow. A shadow is a shadow is a shadow. And that shadow, we've got to stop thinking that there's nothing to be learned from the shadow when the scriptures itself tells us that we are to learn from the shadows. Now, what we're going to do today is make sure you have an accurate shadow to look at. Why do we so stick with, oh man, you guys are just legalist about Adam, that Adam wasn't this and he wasn't that and he wasn't this. He's never going to be anything to us other than a shadow. That's it. Because when you distort the shadow, you distort the light that is creating the shadow. So you need a very clear definition of the shadow. You need very clear edges. You need it has to be very, very clear and very, very sharp shadows. If Daniel was, I hate to go stoop to these lows, but it's just the way it is. So like if Daniel was standing and there was a light behind him and there was a shadow there, Daniel's shadow would cast on the wall about right here. But now if I come up and stood behind Daniel, Daniel's going to look real tall. And that'd be a lie. But see, the real Daniel and the real shadow is plenty enough. What we need to learn from Daniel is what Daniel has, and the shadow of Daniel has to accurately say about Daniel, about the light that Daniel is in. And but if you distort a shadow, you will distort the story. And we are here to tell you today, the entire story of the gospel has been distorted by those who love to eclipse eclipse Adam. Oh, it sounds real good. Well, look what we're doing. You guys say Adam was a dirtbag. He said that yesterday. And we say Adam was, he had that life of God in him. And Adam was this and Adam was that. And Adam was righteous from the beginning. Well, sorry, you're distorting the shadow. You have taken away the tool that God himself placed in Adam to teach us about the light, which is Christ. You cannot put Christ in Adam and learn from his shadow. It is not physically possible. We've been talking a bit about physics, and some people wonder why in the world it's important. This is physics. This is the physics of shadows. And if we can understand that a shadow can be distorted, and if a shadow can speak, if a shadow has a story, that story can be distorted by distorting the shadow.
Mm-hmm. And to also understand that the shadow has a function. When God made the shadows, this was God's ordination. We looked at that, how Christ's crucifixion was God's ordination, how creating Adam in this image was God's ordination. And this was his plan. This was his function. That was one of the things that stuck out to me that we learned yesterday about Adam, is he wasn't only created in the image, but he was also created in the likeness. And that likeness means that he had a function. We see the same thing about the temple. I don't know if we'll get to it in this series or not, but the temple is also a shadow. And that temple is a shadow, but Moses was told to make it after the pattern, after the likeness of which he saw in the desert. And so there's a function to it. The temple had a function. Adam had a function. The law had a function. And as we look at the shadow, we can understand the function. And what was that function? It was to teach us so that we could know and understand even more who we are in Christ today.
Now the question comes, what was the shadow supposed to teach us? Is there a direct statement? So now we've got to take Mike and Daniel's assumptions about what the shadows were supposed to teach. Well, Daniel wanted to do that, and I said, no, Daniel, you can't do that. We've got to be precise. Well, I tried lying, but it just doesn't work. I do lie, but I confess to it every time. Jesus, it's called mental illness, I think. So, but we are going to show you that the very scriptures that tell us that God created the shadows for the purpose of, and to carry it out to a particular point to where that the full light of day could be seen and not through a shadow, that those shadows, what they were pointing at, what every shadow should reveal if you look at the shadow correctly. So Daniel, what you learned in let's rehearse Adam. You went through Romans chapter 5, and you found the first Adam and the last Adam. You found the shadow, and then you found what came after. So a perfect shadow means that something is there, and you've got to keep its borders correct. So, and it's crazy that all of the Christian world accepts the shadow, but they don't accept the revelation that the shadow was established to confirm. Wow. So the first Adam was a shadow. He was a shadow of the last Adam, we are told by Paul, not the second or third Adam, because if it's a second Adam, there can be a third one. I remember being approached 35, 40 years ago when I accidentally said the second Adam, and somebody came up to me and said, Mike, it's not the second Adam. I was offended. Of course, I was offended. I'm the teacher. And that was back in those days. But then he explained to me, he said, if there's a second Adam, there could be a third one. It's like, okay, got it. And so I did learn, and learning is that way, folks. Sometimes it's just one little step from it. So don't go by what everybody knows. Stop and think for yourself. And I mean, you can come back with the group and we can all think together and stir up thought. But what Daniel learned was that what he accepted was there was a first Adam and a last one. And the first Adam was a perfect shadow. I remember reading that about Adam, that he was a perfect representation of Christ. It's like, are you kidding me? How in the world is the one who did it all wrong and made us all sinners a perfect type and shadow of Christ?
Yeah.
Turns out he was a perfect type and shadow of Christ. And by taking that type and shadow and taking away all of the other illusions about Adam, please take away all the other illusions about Adam, that he was righteous, that he was in the light, that the light was in him, that he had something to do with the light. You don't need to go back and redeem Adam. Adam was redeemed at the cross. He's redeemed enough. You don't need to give him some form of redemption from his origins. He was a shadow. He did what God gave him the job to do. Now quit despising him for what we can't accept that God gave Adam to do. And if you say Adam was righteous, you are despising what God gave Adam to do. If you say Adam was all wrapped up in light, or light was wrapped up in Adam, you are despising Adam. Because if you add light, you're taking away shadow. And if you add righteousness, you're adding completion to shadow. Shadow is not complete, and shadow is not light. Shadow is there to teach. And it comes with the best of light. You get really hard lines, and it's like, boy, you cannot miss what this is talking about. But it's a shadow. So how did Adam become, and how did he display and walk out, regardless of what Mirror Bible does to him or anybody else does to him? If you let Adam be the shadow, he, by his complete and utter passing on well, we mentioned it yesterday, the sin nature. And what does that mean? The ability to have desires for sex in your brain or something? That's not the sin nature. The sin nature is the ability to have sin counted against you. That's what Adam passed on to us. Adam didn't pass on to us our humanity. God gave us our humanity. Stop blaming it on Adam. Being a human is a gift. Having thoughts and feelings and emotions, it's all a gift from God. We have every group, my former demon, I tried to cast all the humanness out of you because being human was the problem, right? And you're going to get a clarification of what some of those demons we tried to cast out is just being human. And Jesus was not trying to tell us to get rid of our humanness. He was trying to tell us to stop judging ourselves by anything, first off, but by the true shadow of the law, so the law could reveal what the law had to reveal. So what we had revealed in the first Adam to the last one is the first Adam was a shadow of the perfection of the last. So I don't know if this will hold. So far, the first shadow, Adam, showed us perfection.
You're preaching. I think we should stop and take up an offering right now.
It's too late. We're already broke.
Yeah, so before we can look at the shadow, we have to get this eclipse out of the way.
Oh.
And we had mentioned the term fence laws. And in the Hebrew, we were practicing this last night, it's yagag, la Torah. It means to build a fence around the Torah. So what had happened historically is the Pharisees and the Sadducees, they began to build what was called fence laws. their initial intention was to protect the law. So in other words, it was there to keep people from even getting close to breaking the law. So they made up all of these new laws in order to keep people away. What we want to clarify is that these fence laws are not God's laws. These are what Jesus called the traditions of men. And Jesus said this about, this is in reference, and we'll read this whole story in a little bit, but making mention of these fence laws, he says, making the word of God of no effect through your tradition, which you have handed down, and many such things you do. So by building these fence laws, what they had ultimately done is they had made the word of God, they had made the law of God of no effect. They eclipsed the power that the law was sent to give. They eclipsed the power of what this law was there to teach. And it ultimately made the word of God, the law of God, without effect. And how did they do it? They just began to hand it down from generation to generation. A lot of these laws were oral laws. They weren't written, but they were passed down. You do this and this and this, and the only reason you're going to do that is so that you won't break the great law that was given to Moses.
So since the law is called a shadow of good things to come, what did they make ineffective? They made the shadows ineffective.
Yep.
They made the shadows distorted. They distorted the shadows. When you talk about Adam and make him righteous, you're distorting the shadow. When you take Adam and you try to put light in him, on him, around him, you're distorting the shadow. Let the shadow be the shadow. Jesus said that you have taken the law, you've taken all of the scriptures, which are all there to create a perfect shadow of the real, and you have distorted the shadow by adding laws to the law. So now we're down to talking just about the law. So I completely misdefined this over the years. For 50 years, I have misquoted, misstated this. I said that they had the fence laws that were set up here, but they made these other fence laws to where that once they broke those laws, then if you did these, like Hail Mary and all that, which I was completely incorrect about. These fence laws were set up as even stricter laws that would keep them from getting anywhere near breaking the law. Now, that sounds like you're holier than thou, and that's what it created, is a bunch of people called Pharisees that were holier than thou. You must understand that Jesus was not battling with these people about the law of Moses. He was battling with them about their fence laws. Tell me how that first word is. Torah?
Yayag.
Yayag. Yayag la Torah. Yayag la Torah. And this is what Jesus was trying to get out of the way, because if you'll just get these things out of the way, the shadow will show you exactly what the truth is. So he was trying to get these out of the way. So in an odd way, what these fence laws did is give them a way to actually break God's laws by pretending to keep higher laws. When you know man's righteousness would come up with a law better than God's. And now we're not telling you that, see here, God's laws weren't really all that bad. They wasn't. That's not what we're trying to tell you. We're trying to tell you that God's laws were severe, but they, by self-righteousness, for hundreds of years before that, we've got a tremendous amount of research to do in this, how that the law and the shadows were eclipsed by other things. Therefore, they didn't understand anything Jesus said. The ones who knew the law, which Paul knew the difference between the Torah and the fence laws. And once he got that separated, Paul understood the new covenant perfectly, because he was a man of the Torah. He knew the Torah, but he also knew what part was fence laws and what part was not. And once that's separated, folks, you have nothing left in front of you but the obvious revelation of Jesus Christ and who he is, the light of the world, which is a revelation of who you now are, the light of the world.
And then by understanding this, we can now see exactly what Jesus was teaching against, the fence laws. And what that does is it shows and reveals those who stand up and throw the baby out with the bathwater. They throw the whole law out because they're saying that Jesus was coming against the law of Moses, and that all of these commandments and all of these teachings, that he was just here to redefine it. He was here to just say, hey, you say it this way and I'm here to say it that way, thinking that he was redefining what Moses said. And he's not. He's redefining what the Pharisees and the Sadducees had written. And from what we can understand about this and what we have researched, there's not like a hard number. We know that in the law of Moses, there are 613 commandments. But in these fence laws, Michael, there's hundreds and thousands of fence laws that were created, ordinances that were created, rituals that were created in order to protect and put a fence around the law.
For every one of the 613 laws, there's numerous fence laws for that law. It is, I'm in shock. And for the first time in my life, in almost 55 years of ministry, I understand the conflict that Jesus stepped into and why these people were so against him. It's because he honored the law of Moses, which they were claiming that the laws that they had were the laws of Moses. And he was telling them, these are not the laws of Moses. And when he said, these are your traditions, what are all of our friends from the mystic side, I've heard every one of them say, see here, Jesus says that the law of Moses was their tradition. And that is a lie. You will not find one place where Jesus called the laws of Moses the traditions of men. It is a lie. I know many of you personally that have hung your hat on that statement, and it changed you from gospel revolutionary to mystic divine. And you accepted what people told you about what Jesus said about the law being man's traditions, and that Jesus was not talking about the law of Moses. He was talking about hundreds of laws, many laws added to each of the 613. And so we've got a mess that Jesus was wading into that was obviously going to lead to his death. I mean, other than the fact that it was all prophesied and he was supposed to. But he didn't die for any fence laws. Jesus died to remove the Mosaic law in its form, and even its shadow could now be revealed for what it was really about. So evidently, if we're going to follow this through, and that shadows are there to reveal perfection, we know for sure that Adam revealed. Can you see that? That Adam, if he was a shadow, his shadow revealed perfection in Christ, the first and the last Adam. So now we're on the law. So Daniel, how does this work? How in the world does the law reveal perfection, if that's a correct analogy? Are we stating this? Do we have biblical scriptural validation to say that a true shadow always reveals perfection?
Well, one of the great chapters that we have gone through many times about the law is Matthew chapter 5, and it ends this way. It says, as he's teaching about the law, he said in verse 17, do not think that I've come to destroy the law of the prophets. I did not come to destroy, but to fulfill. And then he begins to teach. We'll walk through some of this here in a little bit about teaching the law versus teaching the fence laws. Jesus does both of them here. But the culmination of that is verse 48. Therefore you shall be perfect, just as your Father in heaven is perfect.
Well, the result of the law was supposed to be perfection and nothing less. In some way or the other, the law, if it was a shadow, and it was of God, just like Adam. It has to lead to perfection. Now, you're either going to get to perfection by keeping the law or having the law fulfilled. There's only two paths to perfection through the law. They so knew that perfection of the keeping the law was so real that they created laws to keep them away from the laws. But the thing about the law is that it is so well put together and creates the perfect shadow that is needed. They actually created an eclipse of the law to where that people couldn't even see what the law actually said. Now, we're going to go through some of those things and how they eclipsed the law, and how that our mystic friends have used Jesus' disdain for this eclipse of the law as to being Jesus' disdain for the law itself. You are wrong, and you're just deadly wrong when it comes to truth.
So let's look at a few of these. So there's hundreds and thousands of them. We're not going to go through hundreds and thousands of them.
Why not?
But there is a few stories that we can look at. The first one is Matthew chapter 12, verse 1. This is Jesus healing on the Sabbath. At that time, Jesus went through the grain fields on the Sabbath, and his disciples were hungry. I'm sorry, it's not the healing on the Sabbath, it's working on the Sabbath. And his disciples were hungry and began to pluck heads of grain and to eat. And when the Pharisees saw it, they said to him, "Look, your disciples are doing what is not lawful to do on the Sabbath." And he said to him, Jesus said to them, "Have you not read what David did when he was hungry? He and those who were with him, how he entered the house of God and ate the showbread, which was not lawful for him to eat, nor for those who were with him, but only for the priests. Or have you not read in the law that on the Sabbath the priests in the temple profane the Sabbath and are blameless? Yet I say to you that in the place there is one greater than the temple. But if you had known what this means, I desire mercy and not sacrifice, you would have not condemned the guiltless. For the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath."
So the construction of this and the words of it are profound. They are exact. They're not ambiguous in any way. See, when the Pharisees started saying, "It says in our law," it didn't say but that in the law of Moses. These were Pharisaical added laws. I have for years stated this wrong, and I went around telling you that Jesus broke the law. I lied. I lied, and I lied by default, but nonetheless, it was a lie. It's just simply not true. Jesus did not go around breaking the law. I thought it was a good way to help people understand the difference between law and grace, and actually I blurred the shadow is what I did. And so we're going to unblur the shadow, because Jesus didn't go around breaking the law. Jesus did break the fence laws. He broke them, and he broke them deliberately. Now, the law about the food laws about the Sabbath, Daniel, what did they actually say?
Well, one of the things that Jesus did say is he taught that the Sabbath was for man, not that man was for the Sabbath. And then he quotes this verse out, I believe it's Haggai, that says that you have missed it. You've missed the whole point when I desire mercy and not sacrifice. So the law was given for man. The Sabbath was given for man, not against man.
Yeah, and the fact of it is that what God did through the law is prove that man was missing the mark completely, because they gave Jesus no mercy and followed through with sacrifice. And that's the culmination of the law, but that's what it was supposed to do, was to bring us to them, to the end of themselves. Thankfully, we were born into this magnificent new creation, and with no complaints. I'm getting fewer complaints as I live, as we understand more and more of the incredible nature of this gospel and the shadows, and the shadows teach everything, folks. If you want to learn anything about geometry, you're going to have to learn about shadows. If you're going to learn about anything about creation, you're going to have to learn about shadows. Shadows are the secret in which all light is hidden.
So whether or not they were eating on the Sabbath, whether or not Jesus was healing on the Sabbath, there's a story about a man who was ridiculed for carrying his mat on the Sabbath. The point of the Sabbath was not against eating, not against getting your animal stuck in the thicket, not about doing any kind of physical labor. The point of it was to keep you holy and to be restful and to do something that was actually, Jesus said the Sabbath was for you, for your enjoyment. So hey, if you enjoy eating on the Sabbath, then gosh darn it, eat on the Sabbath.
If you, it sounds as though Jesus was saying, goodness, if it brings you pleasure to go out and brush down your horses and take care of the cattle, by all means, go right ahead. But anything that is called work, that feels like work to you, don't do it. This day is for you, and not you were not created for the Sabbath. The Sabbath was created for you. This was supposed to be a beautiful thing, not this thing that it was turned into, that everybody goes around looking at his neighbor trying to figure out what he's doing so he can turn him into the Pharisees. Goodness gracious, folks, this Pharisaical pattern has been passed down all the way to 2025. We, to this day, in the guise of keeping the law, are breaking the laws that lead to having mercy on people. But boy, are we keeping the laws. We're keeping the laws. And the law says, but we're having no mercy on anybody except those who are the Pharisees of the system. There's Pharisees to every system. And Pharisees you'll always find the Pharisees in the justification of having no mercy on the weak. That's what a Pharisee is. And they're justified, and they can quote the laws to you. They'll tell you exactly why they do what they do. They're very good law keepers, and the reason that they're keeping the law is the fact that that the law may be destroying people's lives. Well, that's not my fault.
So the next one, Michael, everybody knows.
Everybody.
You got to wash your hands before you eat.
Oof. How about before you rub your nose?
And this isn't just going to the bathroom, washing your hands. This was a whole ritual. This was a whole ceremony, purification process. And this is this was not the law. This was a fence law. Matthew 15, verse 1. Then the scribes and the Pharisees who were from Jerusalem came to Jesus saying, "Why do your disciples transgress the tradition of the elders? For they do not wash their hands when they eat bread." And he answered and said to them, "Why do you also transgress the commandment of God because of your tradition?" Then he points out one of the ways that they do that. We'll get back to that one in a minute. But then he said, "It's not what goes into the mouth that defiles a man, but what comes out of the mouth that defiles a man." And he calls them hypocrites in verse 7. "Well did Isaiah prophesy about you, saying, These people draw near to me with their mouth, they honor me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. And in vain they worship me, teaching as doctrines the commandments of men."
So even the prophets prophesied about these guys.
Yeah.
So it was all a part of what was going to happen anyway. So they just prophesied the distortions, and the distortions are part of the inability to believe. The inability to believe is part of the prophesied condition. The inability to believe is the inability to have faith, which was the prophesied condition. So all of it, you wrap it all up together. You say, well, who's the enemy here? We're not looking for an enemy, folks. We're looking for truth. Which one do you want? Do you want an enemy, or do you want the truth? In the world that we live in now, all you need is an enemy, and you think you have found the truth.
Michael, this one's very clear. I mean, the ones who actually accuse them don't even call it the law; they call it the tradition of the elders.
Yeah.
And then Jesus goes in and said, "No, this is your tradition." And but listen what he says. Why do you also transgress the commandment of God because of your traditions? And this is what you said about this. This is what happened. Instead of protecting the law, they actually began to break the law by prioritizing their fence laws over the actual law of God. And then, as Isaiah said, they were teaching doctrines, pretending that they were the commandments. And this is where they got it all wrong.
Wow. Well, I certainly understand my mystic friends better, because how could I expect them to get right what I had also gotten wrong? The issue is, does anybody change their mind at this point? We understood other verses, and gosh, I just get to where that it's very difficult. Well, these are our verses and we're standing on them. Those are yours and you're standing on them. And you say, well, how do we get around this? Then how did the gospel revolution make it to this point to understand grace and peace? And other denominations didn't. The only thing that I know, folks, is that we did what Jesus said to do, and that's go back. You don't find fence laws in the Hebrew scriptures. That's not where you find them. These were added during that time, but the laws that are written down are the laws of Moses, and they are clear and they're established as to what they are. And the understanding of what the prophecies were all about, instead of the twisted rendition that was handed down, the only thing I can tell you is that we did what Jesus said to do, is to go back and search the scriptures. But you see, when you read part of it and somebody misleads you by intent or by just not knowing what they're talking about themselves, even as I did, when somebody tells you that the Old Testament is the traditions of men, then you just stay away from there. If you stay away from the Hebrew scriptures, you're staying away from the only thing that could cause you to actually know Christ. Otherwise, you're going to develop some personal definition, and you're going to feel it. I'm telling you. But you don't feel what you feel about Jesus any differently than what somebody who practices voodoo feels about what they feel about voodoo, or what Islam feels about what they feel about practicing Islam. You think you feel something more, something better? Nope, it's all the same thing, and it's all on the same roller coaster track. You may be dressed different on the roller coaster, but it's all the same roller coaster.
You just liken Christianity to voodoo. Wow.
Not me.
Let's look at another one. This is swearing oaths. Matthew 23.
Oh, don't take away swearing from me.
I swear. Verse 16. Matthew 23:16. Woe to you, blind guides, who say, whoever swears by the temple, it is nothing. But whoever swears by the gold of the temple, he is obligated to perform it. Fools and blind, for which is greater, the gold or the temple that sanctifies the gold? And whoever swears by the altar, it is nothing. But whoever swears by the gift that is on it, he is obligated to perform it. Fools and blind, for which is greater, the gift or the altar that sanctifies the gift? Therefore, he who swears by the altar swears by it, and by all things on it. And he who swears by the temple swears by it, and him who dwells in it. And he who swears by heaven swears by the throne of God and by him who sits on it. There's another reference, I believe it's Luke 11:42. Jesus responded to this and he said, just let your yes be yes and your no be a no.
Yeah, and of course this is used all the time to say that Jesus disapproved of all of Moses's laws and everything about the temple and all of this. No, Jesus disapproved of the misuse of and misdefinition of. Why would you disapprove of that which reveals you?
Ooh.
Jesus did not disapprove of one law, one prophecy, not one thing written in the Hebrew Scriptures. He absolutely, and the reason that he detested these things so much is because these were the things that were covering up the distinction of the shadows that would reveal him to the people. So yes, he was hard on the Pharisees, but it's not because that they loved Moses' law. It's because they loved their laws.
And this is a really great comparison here, Michael, because he's talking about the sacrifices and the offerings. What was better, the gold that was in the temple or the temple? The fence law that you created or the very shadow itself? See, the temple was a shadow. The animal that you bring in or the altar. See, the altar was an actual shadow. See, in each one of these things that Jesus pointed out here, he was looking at the fence law versus the actual shadow, the actual thing. And that's what he was coming up against. Michael, I don't know if you were as devious as me, but this is one that I used to use in offering time. That when you make that oath to God, you better follow through in that oath. I don't care, come hell or high water. I mean, it was made people feel real guilty. And if you made that oath that you're going to give $500 to the church, you better give that $500 to the church.
And to answer your question, no, I never was as devious as you. So you win the prize. You know, it's really weird because that's the part I never did go for, Daniel, is the oath thing.
Yeah.
I don't know what stopped me there. I think it may have been a personal experience. I went to, if I could remember his name, I'd tell you. It was in his early days. He's the Jewish, evangelical Jewish guy who started, it's a huge organization now, but I was in a little meeting with him of about 50 people and he was teaching. And
was it Sid Roth?
No, not Sid. I had my day with Sid too, but anyway, I can't remember this guy's name, but he started a very large Jewish evangelical group. And so he got up and to take an offering, and he made it the oath. He did. You're going to do this as an oath, and he made it very clear. You don't have to have the money now. You're just having to promise that when it comes in, you will get it. So you were not just laying claim to what people had. You were laying claim to anything they had coming in.
Yeah.
You're awful. So anyway, I had it done to me really early on, and probably within just a few years after I'd started sharing my testimony, and I ended up in this guy's meeting. So we're talking about many decades back. I'll try to come up with his name and let you know who he is. But anyway, that what he wanted was, then he said he wanted everybody to do a $1,000 oath, and that we would. So we signed the thing. We signed the paper that said that we were giving an oath that even though we don't currently have the money, that as the money comes in, that we will send this $1,000 in. And I didn't even have a ministry then. I was in the ministry, but we had not started Mike Williams Ministries long before that. And so I started getting these letters from this guy, and he was letting me know that my oath was due, and that I now had to pay my oath. And so I don't remember if I called or wrote a letter back, and I said, well, my oath was that when the money comes in, I'll give it to you. And he was angry. I don't remember exactly how he displayed that anger, but I remembered him letting me know that God was going to curse my home if I did not put that $1,000 check in the mail to him. And I basically wrote him a screw you letter. And
in the name of Jesus.
Yes, and I've been cursed ever since. I guess I got burnt bad by that one, and so I kind of left that one off. But most everybody I knew really did go with the oath. So I wasn't quite as bad as you.
Well, I had an experience similar to that made me stop. I was at the ICFM, International Convention of Faith Ministers.
Yeah, I spoke for them.
And this was the organization that I was ordained through for a while. And one of the board of trustees members came up, Philip Godot out of California. And they were talking about their office building for ICFM. They had bought a new office building, and they wanted to be debt-free. They had heard from God, they got to be debt-free. And so they had about $100,000 that they had to raise. Michael, they raised $100,000 in this one service.
Wow.
And that's how they did it, was through oaths. And I was one. I came up, and Phil Godot and the other board members laid hands on me after I made that oath. I didn't have $1,000. And nothing even close to it. And but I had made that oath, and then I went home and flew back home, and I was laying in bed one night and I'm thinking, what did I do? And I did the same thing. I wrote them a letter. At least they weren't angry with me. They didn't even respond to me, actually. And I just said that I am not fulfilling this oath. I got in the emotion of things, and I did not hear from God on this, and so I'm not going to do it. And I didn't do it, and then I stopped asking people to start giving oaths.
Isn't that something? So until you got on the other side of one of these, you weren't able to see it for what it was.
Yeah.
Well, and we learn, and at least mine was before I ever did it, and Daniel's was after he started. But I think the thing that you see is that we had the heart to at least look at this thing and say, there's something wrong with this, for people to be writing letters demanding that people do what they oath to do. And we had the guy on TV. I was one of the first people who spoke on international satellite TV preaching. I was one of the first people, because out of Texas, what was his name?
Was it Bob Tilton?
Bob Tilton. And I went there and I spoke, and it was an incredible thought, because see, there was no such thing as satellite TV or anything like that, or cable TV. Cable TV meant local channels, and that's all you got from local cable TV. But this was back when, if you were on satellite, and they had churches who had a satellite dish outside and around the world who was picking this up and having congregations coming in to watch the screen. And I was on that. And Bob Tilton built his whole ministry on making an oath to God. And they, at one point, and I know this to be true, they found the envelopes that had all the people's prayer requests with their checks, and they had taken them out to the dumpster, and they found all of these envelopes with the letters of prayer requests were still in there, and the checks were gone. And so, hooray for Bob Tilton, right? So, folks, there's a lot of shysters out there. We appreciate what you do to support the Mike Williams Ministries and the Gospel Revolution, and your decisions on what you're going to do. You Canadian folks always come through in a way that is just always remarkable. But we do ask you, didn't intend to do this while we're talking about how bad it is to do oaths. We're not asking you to oath us nothing, but if you can, help us out, because we are in a situation where we need your help. We've already had one Canadian stand up and just about a month ago before this conference, and bailed us out of a very difficult place. And we're doing our best, and we're doing our best to handle the funds properly and to do them so that the ministry can keep going for centuries to come, is what the plan is.
The very next verse, Michael, says, "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, you hypocrites, for you pay tithe of mint and anise and cumin, and have neglected the weightier matters of the law, justice and mercy and faith. Those you have ought to have done without leaving the others undone." What they got to do, Michael, is just like the guy was sending you the letter, is they were getting so strict on being precise on the amount of grain and the amount that they were going in. And Jesus came in. He didn't come against the tithing. He said the tithing was part of the law, but what they had made tithing to be. And that's where they got into this very precise, the bean counting, maybe that's where that term comes from, bean counting, and they got into a very legal game about it. And Jesus, his teaching against it was, you're majoring on the minor, and we need to focus on justice and mercy and faithfulness.
And you're not only majoring on the minor, you're making even more minor the minor by hyper-focusing on it to the very grain that you are counting out. And that doesn't count for breaking all of the rest of God's laws. That's what you call self-righteousness. But the real deadly thing about this is, as Daniel has been sharing with you, is that it is obscuring the shadow. And the shadows must be seen, clearly defined. If they are not, you will misdefine what the light that is causing the shadow. I just don't know how you put it any different to say it any clearer. Folks, if you've got an object and you put an object in front of a light and you put a shadow on the wall because you want somebody to learn from the shadow what the object is actually, something that comes and adds to that object and casts a different shadow or blurs the shadow at all, or there's no hope of you ever knowing what the real object of the whole matter is if the object itself has been caused to produce a different type or shape or diminished or increased shadow.
Let's look at one more of these, and this one did exactly that. It created a fence law that actually caused them to miss the actual law and break the actual law. Mark 7 and verse 9. "And he said to them, all too well, you reject the commandment of God that you may keep your tradition." So again, he's saying, you've neglected the commandment of God,
blank, isn't it?
because of your stinking tradition. Verse 10, "For Moses said," so here's what the law actually said, "honor your father and your mother. And he who curses father or mother, let him be put to death. But you say," here's your tradition, "if a man says to his father or mother, whatever profit you might have received from me is korban, that is a gift to God, then you no longer let him do anything for his father or mother, making the word of God of no effect through your tradition, which you have handed down, and many such things you do."
Many such things. And that's just about the way you deal with your elderly parents. Man, how noble. I mean, you got parents in this time and age. Your value and your worth was basically in your ability to work. And so once your parents got of age, then just the same as the parents before them took care of their parents and so on, in the Jewish community especially, when it came time for them to care for their parents, they said, okay, so this is the money that we were going to use to take care of mom and dad. They're hungry. They, live in that little thing out back that we built for them so that they won't be in out of the heat and the cold. But this money that we have that they need for food, we're going to designate it as a gift to God. Now, the thing of it is that they did not have to give it to God. It just had to be designated as a gift for God.
Sneaky.
Yeah. And so that way the money could still be used as long as its amount was still dedicated. And so mom and dad says, we're hungry, we're sorry. You know what the laws are. The money that we have is dedicated to God. And right now we're going to go down to Ruth's Chris Steakhouse and eat. But the money we use is still dedicated to God. It can't go to you. We'll eventually get it into the temple. But the fact of it is, we are committed. We are under obligation now to the law. Korban is what they call it. And we are dedicated to Korban to keep our oath to this money, to the temple. Therefore, we can't feed you.
And the result of that is they broke the actual commandment of God in dishonoring their father and their mother.
Yes, do not dishonor your father and mother. So by keeping the law, their laws, they broke God's laws.
So, Michael, one of the verses that's been a favorite here, especially for me here in the Gospel Revolution, I remember this just was one that changed my understanding of the old and the new and how Christ fulfilled all of this, is Matthew chapter 5 and verse 17. Jesus said, "Do not think that I have come to destroy the law or the prophets." I would imagine that was a thought that these Pharisees had. Because he came in every time that they would try to enforce the law, but they weren't enforcing the law of Moses, they were enforcing the fence laws.
Hundreds. They didn't. How can you even identify the laws of Moses when 613 have been covered up by thousands?
Yeah. And Jesus made a statement, "I've not come to destroy the law. What you think about me is all wrong. You've got it all wrong, because I'm not destroying the law of God. I'm destroying your laws. Do not think that I have come to destroy the law or the prophets. I did not come to destroy, but to fulfill. For assuredly I say to you, till heaven and earth pass away, one jot or one tittle will by no means pass from the law until all is fulfilled."
Wow.
And Michael, he was saying that I've come to fulfill the law of God, and I have not come to fulfill your law. On side note that we were learning about this as we looked at this, in the Jewish mind, the Jewish understanding, when they talked about the law and the prophets, it meant all of the Hebrew scriptures.
Yes. So when Jesus made this statement, he's saying, I came to fulfill. It's important to know what he wasn't saying. It's also important to know what he was saying. And the fact of it is that this was not just Jewish tradition. This is what the temple taught. That if you're talking about the law, you're talking about the entire Old Covenant, your entire the law, the prophets, everything. And Jesus made sure that he linked all of that together. He said, I didn't come to destroy the law or the prophets. What he was saying, I didn't come to destroy any of the Hebrew scriptures. I came to fulfill the Hebrew scriptures.
And then, Michael, as we have taught over the years, this Jesus begins to now teach the law. He starts in verse 21. He says, "You have heard it said that it was said of those of old." Interesting that it says this of those of old, but it doesn't say this in the law. "You shall not murder, and whoever murders will be in danger of judgment. But I say to you that whoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of judgment. And whoever says to his brother, Raka, shall be in danger of the council. But whoever says, you fool, shall be in danger of Gehenna fire."
So as we were reading through this, Daniel and I both realized, my gosh, Jesus wasn't, we've had many of our mystic friends to point to this, say, see, Jesus just changed the law whenever he wanted to change the law. That is a lie, an out and out lie. What Jesus was doing was taking their fence laws that caused them to break God's law, and he moved those fence laws on the other side of the fence, a little closer to home. And Jesus is not saying that this is the way. The law remained the law, and that's what Jesus was trying to get them to do. If we're going to move the fence, let's move it this way instead of your way. Let me move the fence. If we're just going to be willy-nilly move the fence, then as the Son of God, let's move it here. Let's move it to govern your very thoughts and everything about you. I used to teach that, and there was that Jesus was showing the severity of the law and the impossibility of keeping it. But the fact of it is, Jesus was not saying that this is what the law does, that it judges that you are guilty of this, because that's not what the law says. The law doesn't say you're guilty if you thought it. Jesus said you're guilty if you thought it. Just in the same way as the Pharisees set up the fence laws and said you are innocent of taking care of your parents because you have made a fence law that says you've made an oath. Now let's move it on this side of the fence and see what moving the definition of the law to this side. Jesus was not advocating for a change of the law at all. He was simply advocating your end is something that's causing you to break the law, and this end will also cause you to break the law. Let's let the law be the law. Let's let it be the shadow, and let's let it point to what it was designed to point to.
Yeah, he did this through a couple, Michael. That was murder, which we know is a law. That's one of the
Absolutely.
10 Commandments. This one as well, verse 27, you have heard it said of those of old, you shall not commit adultery. But I say to you that whoever looks at a woman to lust after her has already committed adultery with her in his heart.
Yeah.
Moving that fence post.
Right.
But here's one, Michael, in this list. We won't go through each one of these, but here's one that they actually did misquote. He said, you have heard it said that you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. See, that was a fence law that they made. The law was you shall love your neighbor. You shall love your neighbor as you love yourself. And they added this, hate your enemy. But I say unto you, love your enemies, bless those who curse you, do good those who hate you, and pray for those who spitefully use you. For by that you may be the sons of your Father in heaven, for he makes his sun rise on the evil and on the good, and sends rain on the just and the unjust. For if you love those who love you, what reward have you? Don't even the tax collectors do the same? And if you greet your brethren only, what more do you do to others? Do even the tax collectors do this? And here's the culmination of all of this, as we said earlier. Therefore, you shall be perfect, just as your Father in heaven is perfect.
So the shadow was to lead to perfection. And if you get the shadow cleared up, you'll see the perfection in which you stand. And you got to let the law be the law. You can't change it. I remember as Daniel and I were going through this, I was just astounded because how many times I've been confronted over the decades with people that said that God himself said to hate your enemies. We have people in Christianity today that is how they are functioning Christianity. Jesus said to hate your enemies. That's not what Jesus said. Jesus said, you added this to the law. That doesn't say to love your enemies and hate, to love to love, but then to hate your enemies. He's saying, no, I'm telling you that's not the way that it is. In fact, you can go back and look at it yourself. It does not say that. It does not say to hate your enemies. But people will use that and lift it even out of its context here. No, I'm going to hate them just like I'm supposed to.
So now that we know, now that the eclipse is gone, and now that the overshadowing is removed, now we can get to work. Now we can begin to look at the shadow. And as we seen here, what is the shadow? The shadow of the law is perfection.
Yeah.
I'll read once more, and don't worry, we're not going to get into that in this session. We're going to come back in another session. But here's where we're headed. Hebrews 10:1. For the law, having a shadow of the good things to come, and not the very image of the things, can never with these same sacrifices, which they offer continually year by year, make those who approach perfect.
Yeah.
So the ultimate goal of the shadows was to show perfection.
Mm-hmm.
And now that we have taken out the imperfections, we can now look at the perfection.
Isn't that just wonderful? Yeah, we're back to looking at the real structure. And the real structure reveals perfection. The real structure of Adam reveals the perfection of Christ. The real structure of the law reveals the perfection that there is in Christ.
My. So we're coming back at you, and our next one that we're going to do, we're going to continue talking about the shadow of the law, but we're going to now look at its perfection.
Awesome. Love you guys. This is the Saturday morning session, so go downstairs, get your buffet. Don's going to beat you down there if you don't go real quick. Because that's the only reason he ever went to Canada. It wasn't for you, wasn't for the gospel. It was a buffet. He always made that very clear. So he's probably already down there. We'll meet you guys back here again in just a little bit. Love you.